Invisible zippers. They really have their place. I'm old enough to remember when they first came out, and they're really pretty slick. You just have to know a few tricks. I'm going to show those to you next on how to install an invisible zipper. I'm not going to actually do this, but do you see the roll that's in the zipper coil? You need to press that roll out so that you can get closer. I will take this to the pressing surface, and with the tape side up, I will steam this to get that roll out of there so that it looks like this instead. Do you see that that's flat instead of rolled? That's the first step of installing an invisible zipper. I have friends who say you do not need an invisible zipper foot, but I beg to differ. I really prefer a foot with two specific channels down each side, and those are deep channels. It is called an invisible zipper foot. In the olden days, you could get a set that had different ankles, so that there was a slanted, a high, and a low ankle onto which the zipper foot added, but I can't even find one of those today. Most machines are low shank, and I can get for you the invisible zipper foot to go on your machine. Just contact me through my website. Here it is, and I am going to put it on my sewing machine. And on an invisible zipper, you are going to sew from the top to the bottom instead of the bottom to the top. You just have to have your thinking hat on when you install an invisible zipper. So here's the zipper, here's the top, here's the bottom. I want this to go underneath this side like so. Do you see? And I want this side to go under here like so. And I created a situation where I would want to match this line, which is the same as the situation that I had here on this garment, where the more textured fabric in the bodice matches. It has to match going across the zipper. So I'm just going to grab the left side first. I'm going to pick it up and turn this seam allowance out, and I'm going to lay that right along the seam line. And I have already finished off this edge, so now I'm going to put that under with the coil in the left channel of the foot. And I'm going to stitch, and all I have to do is keep my tape even over here. And make sure this seam allowance, in this case, if that were a bodice seam allowance, it would be pressed up, and you would want to have finished that seam allowance as well. I'm sure you can see at this point that I can only go down so far. I'm going to run into this tab. You simply go as far as you can go, and I would tack or back stitch there a little bit. Take time to cut your threads closely. I love magnetic pin cushions, but they magnetize everything. Can you see then we've got that side of the zipper installed? You could actually even close the zipper and see how it's in there. Slick, right? You don't see any stitching. Now you just have to pick up the other part of your garment, and at this point you want to align where it needs to match. So I'm going to turn this over, and what I can do is actually make a mark exactly where that line comes on the zipper tape. Now bring that to this side. That way I know, now how am I going to get this side in right? I'm going to make it be like it has to be, unzip it, say yep, that's zipper needs to be underneath that seam allowance. Now I'm going to flip this back, I'm going to turn it over, all right? Just have to reason through it step by step. But now I need to make sure, I just don't start this anywhere up here. I have to make sure that I align that mark that I just made on the zipper tape with that seam line on my garment. I'm going to hold that in place, or if this was longer, I would pin it. Now the zipper coil is going to be riding in the right channel. I'm going to stop and make sure that my seam allowance is going the correct direction and that my mark is aligned with that seam. See how kind of crazy this seems down here? Now it is possible to have twisted this. You'll do it once and you'll never do it again. You just have to hold it up like I showed you to begin with to make sure you've got things aligned correctly. Go as far as you can go. Now check things to make sure everything is in there correctly and that it zips up and that it matches, which indeed it does. Voila. Okay. So do you see, even though that zipper is pink, underneath there you can hardly see that. The only part of an invisible zipper that you really see is the tab, and you can color that all kinds of colors with all the fingernail polish colors out there today. Now I have to close the bottom seam, correct? That's probably the hardest part of an invisible zipper installation. What I'm going to do is put this here, and I've got to get underneath here, match my seam allowances, kind of pull this to the side, and this is where your needle position might come in handy to snug that needle as where it needs to be to match those stitching, and tack, and then complete your seam from the bottom of the zipper down to the end of the garment. Right in here you can see that I'm still a little distance away from the zipper stitching. Let's look and see what how that appears on the right hand side, and I think that'll be fine. The next step, however, the last step, is you want to attach this flippiness where it wasn't attached to the seam allowances because you couldn't get any further because of the tab. You just want to attach these. So if I just turn this like this, stitch that down. You could of course tack or back stitch. I just want to get this done. I've got threads hanging all over the place, but you can see here then that that is actually attached down, and it's not going to be flopping around inside your garment. It's also a nice thing to do if this is, say, a really nice gown that you're doing custom. Maybe it's a bridal gown or a bridesmaid's gown, to take a little bit of satin and bind these lower edges of that zipper tape together. That's it, an invisible zipper, quick and easy. Don't let zippers scare you. There's nothing to be scared about zippers. I have other videos on lapped application, centered application, and fly front. So check those all out here at my YouTube channel. My mission is to share all I know about sewing here on my channel so that you can come to love sewing just as much as I do.